The Chargers get a 22-19 win over the Eagles in overtime, Caroline, in a game that saw 8, count them, 8, yes, 8, the octagon of turnovers. 8 turnovers, 6 in one quarter, 3 on one play. This game was disgusting and beautiful all at once.
Jalen Hurts himself had 2 turnovers in one play. The first player in NFL history to throw an interception and fumble the football on the same play. So congratulations to Jalen Hurts for making NFL history on Monday night. You don't have to specify. Congratulations. You don't have to specify if it's good history or bad history, but history is history. You know how people say, like, oh, I love offense, or oh, I love to watch good defenses. If you love turnovers, this was the game for you. I do want to give the Chargers their flowers because Jim Harbaugh said that this win is right behind his wedding day and the birth of his 7 children, which is a pretty bold and weird statement, but we'll get to the Chargers side of things. I think the story of this game is the Eagles. The Eagles are broken. The Eagles' offense in its entirety is broken. Not only are the Eagles limping down the stretch, the Eagles are nosediving into the fiery pits of hell down the stretch. I mean, this has to be, without looking back on every single game in Jalen Hurts' professional career, that had to have been the worst night for him. And look, not every single interception was his fault. You know, the target to A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown needs to come down with that football. But also, it's not like it was a perfect throw. It was catchable, but it was late and it was a little bit behind him. That final throw of the game, that was just an insane play by the DBs, and credit to the Chargers defense for that. But this passing game for the Eagles has been broken all season long. And when you don't have a Saquon Barkley that's playing like the best player on the planet, like he was last year. I mean, he popped off the big 50-plus yard run last night. That was huge. He had a 100-yard game last night. That was huge. But that's also only his second 100-yard game of the season. We're in early December. It would seem inconceivable after the year that we saw Saquon Barkley have last night. So they don't have the same threat on the ground. They don't scare you through the air. I think the Eagles just kind of forgot that A.J. Brown wears an Eagles uniform, because where the heck is A.J. Brown on any given night? This Eagles team, I understand that they have one of the most menacing defenses in all of the NFL, and that was on full display last night, getting after Justin Herbert. This is not a Super Bowl caliber offense. And if I'm a Cowboys fan, if I'm Jerry Jones, I'm looking around and thinking, there is a path. There is a clear and legitimate path if the Eagles continue down the sea of suck that they have been down over the last 3 weeks.
The problem for that is that the Eagles have the Raiders and the Commanders twice left on their schedule. I think the Eagles are going to get
They can win those games.
But here's the thing. You mentioned the A.J. Brown issue. A.J. Brown had 2 drops last night. One of them was on a touchdown, would have made a wild difference in this game. But to be clear, I don't think A.J.'s play was the problem. I think A.J.'s mouth has been the problem, because the Eagles have changed who they are in the last several weeks, trying to make sure that they get their receivers fed, because all anybody wants to talk about is whether or not their passing game is effective enough. Well, in the process of that journey over the last 3 weeks, where we've seen an explosion in targets for A.J. Brown, the Eagles lead the NFL in turnovers during that period. What's happening here? What's happening is that they've gotten away from the identity of what they do best. Now, we've talked about the fact that their offensive line isn't what it has been in years past. Absolutely. But to me, when you're in overtime, you're in an overtime matchup, and you got Hurts running around making what admittedly was a bad read and a bad throw that turned into a great interception that cost you the game. My question is, did you really need to be throwing that right there? This team has lost the identity of who they were. And it felt like for the last year and a half, the Eagles didn't give a damn what any of us thought. They went out and they did what they wanted to do, how they wanted to do it. And they were the cool kids in the block, and they could turn around and say, hey, you may not believe in it, but it works for us. And they were right. It got them to a Super Bowl. It's not working now because I don't know if it's the outside noise is finally making its way in. I don't know if the inside noise has gotten so loud they feel like they can't ignore it. But for whatever reason, the identity of what the Eagles are over the last 3 weeks has not felt the same. And in that process, they've put the football at risk. So now we're looking at an Eagles team that's on a losing skid, and they've got to get it right. Number one step for Philly getting it right is to go back to being the confusing Philly team that doesn't care whether A.J. Brown gets any targets, that 1 week might not throw the football at all. Go back to just looking at yourself and say, how do I beat the snot out of this team where's my matchup advantage? Because Saquon did have a good game last night, and I thought Saquon was an opportunity to be a matchup advantage. But instead, they kept putting the ball in that man's hands, and that was a mistake. Whether Hurts is bad or whether Hurts was having a bad night doesn't matter right now. What matters is the play calling never changed. The direction never changed. They just kept rolling it out there saying, this time it'll be different, and it wasn't. So you get a turnover-laden game that costs you in the end. This is Philly overthinking everything, Caroline.
And it's felt like that for a good bit of this season. But it was so easy to look past because the Eagles were winning games. In spite of having an offense that felt one-dimensional, sometimes at best, well, the defense was so good and they didn't make too many mistakes, and they were able to force their opponents into mistakes themselves that they could capitalize on it. And I was like, look, like, it doesn't look pretty, but a win is a win in the National Football League. That's all that matters. And I do subscribe to that belief. And that is why for a long time, Frank Schwab will have him on later in the show for his updated power rankings, but for so long, the Eagles were in that top spot in the power rankings because we were looking around saying, look, like, yeah, it's sometimes fluky and sometimes, yeah, like the Eagles win in the 11th hour, but the Eagles still win. I think we're now seeing it come to fruition that you can't rest on that. You can't rest on having a great defense and a one-dimensional offense and winning games, late, or winning games in kind of fluky ways. You can't do that consistently throughout the span of a 17-game season. And I squarely do not trust the Eagles. If and when they find themselves in the postseason, I mean, looking at the NFC, I'll take the Rams. I'll take the Seahawks over this iteration of the Philadelphia Eagles. I'll take 5 or 6 teams in the NFC to make a run to a Super Bowl before I'll take this Philadelphia Eagles team. Because it's not like it's gotten better. It's not like we've seen the gears start to turn a little bit with this offense, the offense start to figure some things out throughout the season. No, it's just been straight up bad. If anything, Fitz, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, you're not wrong. And I want to give credit to the Chargers, who in this process, their defense played lights out. They made some amazing plays. Justin Herbert was a warrior, a week removed from hand surgery. As Harbaugh pointed out afterwards, he was stiff-arming people with a broken hand. I mean, it was a valiant and gutsy effort by the Chargers. We'll continue to break that portion of it down. But that wasn't the only piece of big news that we got yesterday in the NFL. We also got some interesting quarterback news. For anybody that didn't see this, we all know that Daniel Jones has torn his Achilles. He's gone. And then the news came out that Riley Leonard, who was presumably going to take over, has also strained his knee, so he may miss some time. And as a result, the Colts are desperate to figure out a quarterback. They don't have one, including working out 44-year-old quarterback Philip Rivers on Monday night. They're now deciding what to do next at the position. Now, I want to stress here, they are looking at every option. Philip Rivers is just one of those options. So this is not, I'm not coming in saying that the Colts and Philip Rivers are about to sign a deal, Caroline, but if they were to, this feels like a weird fit. Not just because he's 44, not just because he hasn't played in the league in years, but because of Shane Steichen's offense. Like, just the thought of Shane Steichen likes a mobile quarterback that can get around and get a lot done, right? So, yeah, Diana can tell me that the workout went really well, but my God, like, I'm just thinking about 44-year-old Philip Rivers just coming out, who was never particularly mobile in the first place, coming out being the answer in Shane Steichen's offense. This just shows you how desperate the Colts have gotten.
Yeah, this takes, going back into the well to a completely different level. Look, I know you said, you mentioned all those things. It's not just the age. It's not just the fact that he hasn't been in the league in 5 years. It's not just the fact that he's closer in age to my parents than he is to me. It's not just the fact that he is a grandfather.
Ouch.
Literally. Like, his son has a child. So he is literally a grandfather. Terry Bradshaw was busy, I guess. Though all of those things matter. And when you're 44 years old and you've been on the couch for the last 5 years, and look, no disrespect to Philip Rivers, when the NFL comes calling, you answer that call. Like, good for him that he's been able to kind of reignite in what his career and his passion is. Like, I don't blame Philip Rivers for any of this. Not everybody gets to play in the National Football League, much less get a couple of different cracks at it. I just don't see any world where this works. Unless Shane Steichen says, take the ball, hand it to Jonathan Taylor on every single down in every single snap of the game. I don't see how this works.
Yeah, this, again, just speaks to the fact that they're out of options. I believe Brett Rippon is on their practice squad and could be elevated. I would be, it would have been much more understandable to me if the reports were coming out yesterday that they were reaching out to say Derek Carr. If Derek Carr's healthy enough, a good situation for Derek Carr to try and step into a team and maybe win himself a Super Bowl. That would have made a lot of sense. But man,
Ryan Tannehill too.
Tannehill.
Ryan Tannehill would have made sense. Like, he's a mobile guy, and obviously, yes, he's in his late 30s. He doesn't have that same mobility that he had when he was in his early 30s, but that would still make more sense to me than Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, and also, if you believe that Phillip Rivers is a Hall of Famer, coming back into the league would actually restart his 5-year clock. So that's another interesting development on whatever that means for Phillip Rivers' Hall of Fame status, should you believe. Look at this. Phillip Rivers' oldest kid is almost the same age as Riley Leonard. This is why I said yesterday, and I will say it again. When you are on a Super Bowl caliber football team, you cannot be irresponsible enough to not have a proven entity somewhere, whether it's your practice squad, whether it's your backup quarterback. You got to have somebody that's seen some football that can come in and make it happen, because there is no opportunity now to try and save your season by trading for a Joe Flacco. There is no opportunity to use other players on other rosters. This is why consistently, we see teams talking about roster limits and how it impacts the quarterback, because if you're the Colts, you're sitting on a season where a month ago we thought maybe the Colts could be representing the AFC in the Super Bowl. Now they might miss the playoffs completely and end the season with an 8,372-year-old quarterback that takes one hit, and everybody's going to sit back in their chair and hope to God that he's okay.
Yeah, and what the Colts are going to ask Phillip Rivers to do, let's just exist in a world where Phillip Rivers is the next starting quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts. Aren't there so many other guys in the league that can probably do that? Like, is Shane Steichen going to ask Phillip Rivers to drop back 30 to 35 times a game? I can't imagine a world where that would be the case. I can imagine with a 44-year-old Phillip Rivers who has not played a down of football since COVID, I would imagine the game plan would be, look, hand the ball off as much as humanly possible. We'll ask him to throw it, short screens, maybe 10 to 15 times a game. You're telling me Phillip Rivers is the only free agent quarterback, only quarterback in the league that isn't under contract right now that can do that for you? Like, I just want to know why Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, because they're looking around and saying, oh my God. And look at that schedule. You'd be putting 44-year-old Phillip Rivers in his first game in Seattle against what is one of the 3 or 4 best defenses, a top 5 defense in almost every major statistical category in the NFL this year, a top 2 scoring defense in the NFL, all taking on a 44-year-old quarterback that hasn't seen. Like, we constantly talk about the lack of the game conditioning for guys that are coming back, where it's like, man, got to make sure we're in game shape. It's like, okay, what's game shape look like? As an old man on this show, by the way, I feel more qualified than anybody to tell your body in your 40s doesn't do what you think it does. Now, I was never an athlete like Phillip Rivers was, but still, Phillip Rivers at 44 is not. You think Aaron Rodgers looks like an unk. I mean, we think Kirk Cousins looks like an unk. This isn't unk status. This is grandpa status, right? So I don't know Pawpaw coming in is going to save the Colts and find their way into the playoffs. And that just, what's his body look like for a deep playoff run? So maybe they think that they're going to get Riley Leonard back quickly, so they just need a stopgap for a week or two. But man, again, there's got to be somebody that has played more currently that would be willing to answer the bat phone. And frankly, I don't know that Phillip Rivers at 44 years old would be any better an option than Brett Rippon would be off the practice squad.
And I also don't want to hear the, well, Brady did it argument. Every time we use Tom Brady as an example for something, I throw it out the window. Like, well, Brady was a 6th round pick. Yeah, and he's the exception, not the rule. Yeah, well, Tom Brady played well into his 40s. Yeah, and he's the exception, not the rule. Like, Tom Brady's scared of strawberries. That's how he took care of his body. So much so that he was like, nope, can't eat a strawberry. Too bad for me. So I don't want to hear that, Brady did it. Rodgers is doing it. Yeah, and Rodgers looks every bit of 42 years old. So I don't want to use hear the argument of, well, these guys did it. That I think is irrelevant to me in this circumstance. I will go back to, though, good for Phillip Rivers. If he gets an opportunity, then good for him. I do not blame him. I put this squarely on the Indianapolis Colts organization for not having a better option behind Daniel Jones that they trust to come in and a have to have it, have to save your season kind of moment.